Hey guys, when I was in Chicago last month, I was lucky enough to sit down with the lead designer of Grand Archive, Sylidar, for a chat to interview him about some things about the game. And you might be wondering, why am I here talking to you about it rather than just showing you that interview? Well, I have a confession to make that in my Ascent haze on Monday afternoon, you'll see that I set up our shot, I mic'd up Syl and I, and then in my infinite wisdom, I did not plug in the receiver for our microphones into the camera. So the audio is a little bit scuffed. I've done my best to make it as listenable as possible, so I just wanted to apologize to you guys for that. It should be okay, but I apologize for any audio hiccups that you guys might encounter during that interview. Thank you again to Sylidar for sitting down with me to chat a little bit. I think it was a super interesting conversation, so I hope that you guys enjoy it. Hopefully you guys are looking forward to Mortal Ambition. If you are here on the channel, stick around. On the 21st, we will have our spoilers for Mortal Ambition here on the channel, so stick around for that. But yeah, without further ado, hope you guys enjoy. Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Cam from the Lineage Break Podcast, and I'm here. I have a special guest for here at Ascent Chicago. I have Sylidar, the lead developer for Grand Archive, here with me. Hey, Syl, how's it going?
I'm okay.
Okay. It's been a long weekend, right?
Yeah.
I'm glad we got you on Monday. So it's Monday of Ascent Chicago. I do appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah.
But Syl and I are just gonna, have a candid conversation. Is hopefully the goal. Talk about Ascent Chicago, maybe some design stuff. That's sort of how you guys do things. Because I feel like whenever you guys are interviewed or talk about the game, it's lots about the game itself, but not so much about like how the game is made behind the scenes. As long as that's okay to talk about, but
yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see.
Yeah. You guys might get some hard cuts in here where things maybe need to get cut out of the interview, but that's why we're doing it like this. But so before we get there, I want to talk a little bit about Ascent Chicago. This is not it's not like Worlds or Nationals. It's not the highest of high level, but it still was the biggest Ascent of all time, right? And, were you guys expecting that? Is that something that sort of like sprung up on you?
Yeah, we actually had like 330 ticket sales, so we knew it was going to be the biggest. We actually thought there was going to be more round one attendance because we usually only have a 10% drop off from ticket sales to round one attendance. But for some reason, everyone's planes were getting delayed and canceled. I don't know what's going on with air travel.
Maybe it's still that cloud strike thing, have some leftover.
Maybe. I mean, Alan's flight just got canceled today too. Yeah. So, maybe I thought first it was like Houston thing, but I guess it's like everywhere.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, still 283 players, right? Yeah. It's huge, and it was. I think So we try to be positive. We're positive people, right? I think that the story of the weekend, people were like a little miffed. I don't know if you were getting that same sort of reaction from people. There was a lot of Sylvie players. I think that the format is like pretty diverse, and you guys can check out like the champion breakdowns, the element breakdowns. I think are like probably more diverse than the game has been. I feel like every event the game sort of spreads wider, and that's obviously what happens as the game gets bigger and there's more cards. The card pool increases. But did you sort of expect the reaction to Sylvie? Did you think Sylvie was going to be as big at the tournament as she was?
I think Sylvie's always going to be popular because of the accessibility.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think she also leaves room for a lot of deck building decisions, and so that's why we saw a bunch of really good players bring Sylvie and have success. Like a lot of I think Chess Club is made with 5 players.
Yeah,
and then 3 of them made it at the top 8.
It was 3. Yeah, 3 in the top 8. Which is huge. They definitely found the secret sauce.
Yeah, and so but there's over 60 Sylvies, and
right.
3 of them running almost the exact same list. I don't even know if they're anything different.
Yeah, I think it was exactly the same, and there were
that exact list was the one that had basically a 60% conversion rate to
right.
top 8. So
which is really impressive for sure. I mean, yeah, I think approachability goes a long way. The Recollection deck is, I think both of them are very strong, right? We've seen the representation from these 2 Recollection decks. Is that something that was sort of intended? I know that when we talked about it a little bit at Worlds about sort of the competitive viability of the Recollection decks before they came out, you guys were pretty tempered. Be oh, we'll see, how it shakes out. But it seems like they are
extremely competitively viable, which I think is a really good thing for the game to have that sort of accessibility. Was that the intended goal? Did it just
Yeah,
add
I
up
mean,
a little bit?
it was meant to just add 2 new options to the meta.
Sure.
It's like, I think Sylvie is probably just more of an effect of people have been wanting Sylvie to work for a long
Sure.
time, and so there might be like a double up in, people trying to play Sylvie.
Mm-hmm.
But Tristan, there might be several factors why Tristan has played a lot less than Sylvie.
Sure.
I think like maybe the skill cap or like the skill ceiling is like harder to reach.
Right.
And maybe it's like less accessible because of the cards in the recollection.
Sure.
I mean that's sorry in the main set.
In the main set, yeah, stuff like Shadow's Claw being a little bit expensive, Shadow Reaver. Yeah, that's fair. The Sylvie deck is like pretty close. I mean, like you said, there's a lot of deck building options, but that like sort of core of the Sylvie deck is just like in the recollection deck. You get all of those cards just by buying the deck.
Yeah, but like it was just be 2 more options for the metagame. It didn't really mean to push anything out of the meta. Like all the decks that were in the metagame last season they're still pretty much in the meta.
Right.
It's like Merlin still does okay, Proxy's fine.
Right.
There's like ally decks, they've evolved a bit, so.
Yeah, I mean, even through the MRC meta, like this is our second large tournament that has had these cards legal. But Taipei was so close to the release that I feel like a lot of stuff was unsolved. But like through the regionals and online events, we've seen like real ebbs and flows of like the robot alliance deck. Nico seeing a lot of success, and then here at Chicago being a little bit less represented. And so I do think that the game as a whole feels like it's in a really healthy place. But there was a bit of at least personally, I saw a bit of a volatile reaction to Sylvie's representation this weekend.
Yeah, I think also in the West, we just like ally decks.
Sure.
And slimes count as allies.
Sure.
So, in the Taiwan, one of the regionals in Taiwan just happened.
Mm-hmm.
With by the way, all of those regionals are capped.
They're huge.
They're like 80, 90. The store can't hold anymore.
Right. Yeah.
They have to do like a lottery system to get
Oh,
people.
really?
Yeah. But I think the top 8 was there's only 2 Sylvies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even the top 8 in Chicago, right? There was 6 Sylvie players.
Oh yeah,
but neither of them made it to the finals.
Yeah.
Right. Like it shows if you build a deck to beat Sylvie, you can do that. But I think regardless, we did see from you guys a bit of a reaction to Sylvie's strength. You made a sneak peek at the ban list that, as of recording, comes out today, but it's not yet out. That you guys are going to be errating Proxy's Vault. Is that something that came pretty late? Was that something you guys had planned already and just wanted to see how Chicago shaked out?
I mean, we basically had the idea to errata Stone Skill Ban, is the card you're talking about, a lot earlier because it's probably the strongest card in Terra.
Sure.
But we didn't want that being the reason why we can't introduce new strong cards in Terra.
Sure.
So because just because this one card is so strong, now all the other Terra cards can't be good.
Yeah, and especially with Mortal Ambition around the corner, which is going to support Terra, that could be kind of a concern.
Yeah. And we're super against errata in cards, but Proxy's Vault is there exists to have these balance patches for a physical card game.
Mm-hmm.
And so we felt like it's fine to do it with Proxy's Vault.
Right.
So.
Well, I think it's only been, as of recording this, 12 hours, right? So we'll see what the sort of echoes are, but at least anecdotally, people that have talked to me about it are all really positive on this being the way that you sort of address that potential issue with Sylvie's overrepresentation. Is this something that I think you said at the keynote that, and you said just now that you don't really like to errata cards, but when it concerns specifically Proxy's Vault, is this something that you're a little bit more open to?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think one of the strengths of Proxy's Vault is sort of that you don't have to hurt people that have picked up these cards that maybe are expensive. You give them away free at all of these events, regionals, whatever. And so if those are either changed or removed from the format, it feels a little bit like less of a blow. I know that we have Scepter on the category list as well.
Yeah. There are some Proxy's Vault cards we wouldn't errata.
Sure.
Xander level 2, people have CSRs of those are, so yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but because there hasn't been version where you need to financially commit to get Stone Skill Band, it's fun.
Do you think that cards like this, I think Stone Skill Band and Scepter are the ones that come to mind for me first, that are sort of used, at least at the time of their release, were used to prop up archetypes that were not super strong, like Water at the time that Scepter came out was pretty weak. Even, Terra, this is way before Recollection decks, was a little bit on the weaker side. Do you feel that it's okay to like put these into the game as this Proxy's Vault thing, and then eventually, maybe Water gets a little bit too strong and you just decide, Scepter is too powerful and you remove it from Proxy's Vault?
I don't think particularly Scepter is problematic in the non-water mirrors.
Sure.
I think it's doing what it's intended currently with water mirrors, but the clause that says you can activate a card from the material deck is very dangerous for future game design, because like say in like 50 years from now, long time.
Can't wait.
There's like so many water decks that work, and because you can activate this card from your material deck, it's going to be in every single sideboard at least,
right,
or main board, because it's just you can activate it. It's like kind of like Yu-Gi-Oh, where it's like, okay, the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh, you barely use your extra deck. We had an extra deck. I don't think we had an extra deck at the beginning.
It was like the fusion deck.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So and then even when they first introduced it, you barely used it. And then like now, you basically go into your extra deck like 6 times in a turn,
right?
Even more, right? So you don't want to be like that. Like trying to limit the amount of cards that you would want to run that you can activate from the material deck, so it doesn't feel like, okay, this is like you just have a 19 card hand,
right?
So,
yeah, I think that you guys so far have done a great job at sort of keeping things in check. We've had, throughout the year now the Grand Archive's been around, we've had a couple of like problems, but even the things that have sort of cropped up and been a little bit like stronger than their competition were like really not that bad. Like everybody, moans, myself included, about the FTC metagame from decades ago now. That Merlin was quite strong, but then we saw at that premier event in Ascent Houston, she didn't even crack the top 2, right? Sort of similar to this Sylvie situation.
And she still had Everest back then.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So Everest lost to allies too. So
I want to talk a little bit about how you guys approach maybe game design or set design. I want to leave it a little bit more open so that I don't like pinpoint towards you. I know that you went to school for game design, right?
I went to school for game development.
Oh, I see.
Program. I mean, you take like a game design class too, but yeah.
And then, did this feel like sort of a natural fit? I know we've heard about the origin story of Grand Archive a couple of times, where you sat down and said there was a game that you wanted to create using mechanics that you liked from other games. But did this feel like sort of a natural fit to create this development team, or did it sort of snowball out of control?
Well, Tin and I were like basically the first 2 members. Tin is the art director, and we were basically working on like a gacha game.
Oh,
sure. Like basically, I was a terrible programmer, so art would be kind of like ahead, and then I would just be, give me a week. Sure. But yeah, so I mean, we would like do a bunch of like game jams. I don't know, they're basically like 20 or 48-hour marathons where you make a game and like you don't sleep and make a game. So we used to do a lot of that, and when you do a lot of those, you kind of come up with like a bunch of game designs, because if you're making like a big project, you only come up with one design that you like iterate over like a long time. But if you're doing game jams or like a bunch of smaller projects, you kind of come up with these game designs that you put in the back of your head that you can reiterate on later. One of those was like the Grand Archive idea.
Sure.
And it was actually probably meant to be digital at first.
Yeah.
And then a lot of things changed, and then it became like a lot of UX had to be refined to make it work in paper.
I can see sort of shades in that a lot of times when I demo people the game. The like touchstone that I point to is something like Hearthstone. I feel like at least combat feels like very mechanically like that, so I could see where it fits as that sort of digital idea. Is that something that you guys have ever considered doing for Grand Archive, or is that a little bit too far off?
We want to. It's just that we want to do it in a way where it doesn't hurt the main product.
Right.
It doesn't compete as much. Maybe like something like how Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links was.
Sure, like sort of like an ancillary version of the game that sort of works alongside you playing the regular game. Interesting. So, if you can tell the people a little bit at home, I know that you've said it on camera before, but you are the lead designer and you're also in charge of product development, right? Is that your official title?
Yeah.
And so, like, what exactly does that mean? Like, what is as far as not using AMB as an example, but not trying to like pry for information. Like when an idea like AMB comes up, is that like you decide I want to make a mage warrior set because those need support, and then you sort of find that setting later, or is it a different process between the team?
Well, it's not really like one person does. So I probably have like a really big say into what we do, but first we decide like what type of product it is, and then we decide like the story for it, and then we consult if it's like, oh, is the design feasible?
Sure.
Usually, one of the things we like lock in like very early in a set is what are the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 classes. So there are
as far as support, you mean?
Yeah. So like in AMB, tier 1 class would be mage and warrior.
Sure.
And then there's tier 2 classes that get like a bit more support than tier 3.
Mm-hmm.
So
interesting.
So even though every set supports all 7 classes, we can't support all of them like equally because some of them will have like starter deck product and stuff like that.
Right.
Some of them needs like haven't had support in a much longer time period because advanced elements are more restrictive in when we can support that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's that. So and then we decide the advanced elements that fits in that set.
Sure. So I have to assume that the reason why the recollection decks came out the way that they did, being Assassin and Tamer, was that sort of with A and B in mind, that was going to give a large set of support to those other 2 original Dawn of Ashes classes? Or was that just sort of happened to work out that way, that the Mage and Warrior, also released in Dawn of Ashes, are the next to get a large set of support?
Well, you can kind of predict the class order. You just
right.
like see, oh, what class have they not supported in a long time?
Right.
So it makes sense that Mage and Warrior being the most OG of classes,
sure.
Even if you count like Merlin and Fractured Crown, it's like still a long time since we've directly supported them with this thing. So yeah, and then like there's like Tamer and Assassin is directly supported in MRC. AMB was the 3 older, like the new classes.
So AMB is going to be the first set. Not the first set that supports 7 classes. We saw that in MRC, right? But it is the first sort of like flagship set that's going to do that. Did you find it like easier to, since it's assumingly a bigger set, did you find it easier to fit in all of the support that you wanted, or was it still a little bit hard to balance those tier 1, 2, 3 classes?
It's actually not that bad because we only have 2 starter decks for this set.
Yep.
It's similar to like Recollection deck, but there's a lot of staples with AMB that is, I guess, more generic that can work between more classes, I guess. So it wasn't that hard. And we wanted AMB to be more of a set that is able to be supporting a community that's more standalone. So like if you missed out on the first 4 sets and you were only able to buy AMB, you would still be able to play the game.
Yeah.
So that's why we cut down, even though it wasn't a Recollection release, it was a regular starter deck release. That's why we cut down to 2.
Sure. Yeah, I do want to ask you a little bit about that. I know something that is huge, we've been talking about it on the show a little bit ago, is that you guys have announced that you're reprinting Dungeon Guide. We've also seen that Zephyr's getting reprinted. Sort of these like staple cards. Obviously, Dungeon Guide in need of like a price reprint. But Zephyr, not so much. It's like a very attainable card. But like you said, is sort of a staple that will help people that are newer to the game approach it a little bit easier. Do you see sort of like shades of, I know that Grand Archive is currently a non-rotating game, but does this feel like sort of like a second Dawn of Ashes? Do we think we'll see these sort of like core sets, as it were, like similar to Magic, that sort of help new players get in every so often?
I think the reprints, the super generic ones, it made sense to reprint. But then there are reprints that are very specific to Mage and
Sure.
and Warrior, which were the tier 1 classes of support, that made sense. We want to reprint. Otherwise, when a store buys a product and the player buys from them the starter deck, now they have to order a 10-set uncommon from a previous set
Right.
the store doesn't have. So it just makes sense to reprint like cards like that.
Yeah, I think it really does show a dedication to the availability of the game, which is something that I really appreciate. I know it's maybe not something that other card games are really known for, is that sort of dedication to availability. We just got the announcement that Alchemical Revolution is going to be getting its Alter Edition in January. I know that's something that you guys have wanted to do for a while. It's just more of a like production capacity problem.
Yeah.
And you also announced that you're putting new cards into Alchemical Revolution to sort of, is this to incentivize players that were even there for ALC to buy the product, just to,
Yeah, it's more of an incentive for stores
Sure.
to make it less risky for stores to carry it, because then now you can still sell to your previous players, and then you can still you don't mind holding the stock, because the goal is that these will be widely available at distributors, and you don't have to pre-order all at once. You can just order it when you run out.
Right.
And so maybe you ordered a bit too much. It's fine. I mean, it should be appealing to both new players and old players.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, I think that this sort of way that you guys are handling Alter Edition, it's not something that is new to the card game sphere. We've seen lots of games do that. First edition, unlimited edition, even as far back as Pokemon started that way. Have you guys found a lot of success with that business model? Because something that I do find historically interesting is that almost everybody that started that way eventually moved away from it. Do you think that's something that you'll have to consider if the game keeps growing in the future?
I don't think. I think it's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, first edition is like maybe 1 or 2 waves of release, and then Alter is probably, you could say, like there is a definitive amount. It's not like infinity, right? It's like we're gonna reprint it for like maybe 3 years. So eventually it goes away. Like Dawn of Ashes Alter Edition goes away.
It's 2025, right? We have a date for it.
Yeah. So eventually it goes away, and then the cards eventually need to be reprinted in a different product.
Sure.
So it's. I mean, a lot of companies do that too. It's like unlimited doesn't actually mean unlimited. It's like actually some companies it does actually mean unlimited.
Sure.
Most
don't, right?
But most don't. Like eventually, even if they go out of print, because a manufacturing business can't make like 200 SKUs all at once.
Right. Exactly.
So,
especially.
But with Alter Edition, it's meant for more of like it's planned for like a 3-year product life cycle.
Sure.
It's not meant to be like unlimited like that. So
yeah, and so is the plan for there to be an Alter Edition for everything, or is that sort of like a as needed basis? I know that FTC was famously a little bit of a larger print run, and so we're seeing ALC, which is much more needed than FTC first. But it's like FTC somewhere down the line going to get an Alter run, or is this just going to be dedicated to the main booster sets?
I mean, first of all, we've already said publicly that FTC won't be getting an Alter Edition. But even if we had that option to, I don't think we would need it until we do some sort of Cambria specialty set, because we needed to reprint DOA cards because Alter was already out of print.
Right.
We might like put in some FTC cards into that as well. So yeah, it's just the timeline for that set. We probably don't need Alter for a long time. So
sure.
There might be in the future. Okay, we released set 9 and 10, but we released the Alter Edition for set 10 before 9.
Right.
That could be like a case as well. So.
One other thing that you guys haven't talked about in a while, so if I'm stabbing too hard, let me know. Something that I find really refreshing about Grand Archive is that for the most part, when a set comes out, not every card is going to be like competitively viable, but they all sort of fit into a niche. Like they have a purpose for either some like unique deck build of a hero, or some sort of strategy that they fit into. But I think a large part of the reason, at least from my understanding, why that is there's no concessions to a limited format. I know that you guys started DOA and a little bit with FTC in trying to experiment with draft and and sealed, and I know for a while you guys have been putting that on the back burner. Is that still something that you guys are considering, or do you think you have to take too many concessions to your design philosophy to make limited work?
Well, we're always getting more room and sets to work with now because starting in DOA, it was like 280 card set trying to make 4 classes and 3 different elements each to work.
Mm-hmm.
And we were trying to make limited work back then too.
Right.
And so there had to be many cards that filled many roles.
Right.
So in the future, we'll have more room because we're supporting less classes per set. So yeah.
At some point, we'll maybe revisit that. Yeah, I do definitely think it's interesting that I see a lot of games that have that pitfall, right? When they design a set that is limited forward, it's great and it creates that limited format, and that's a great way for people to engage with the game. But it does leave you with a lot of cards in those sets that are sort of made only for limited, and they don't really cross over into constructed, and that makes this sort of opening experience worse.
Yeah, we have some of those too. Like in when we did Eager Page was basically a draft card, right?
Yeah.
So
sure. So with all that in mind, I did want to circle back and talk a little bit about the ban list. Now that we've gotten our game design conversation out of the way. You said on the way that maybe we could talk about the ban list a little bit early. I heard from a reliable source, yourself, that there's going to be a lot of category changes to the game tomorrow.
Yeah. All right. You want to know what's happening?
I do want to know what's happening.
All right. Nothing's going to Cat 3.
Oh, really?
Did you think
the bait and switch?
Did you think something was going to go up?
You did that on purpose. I know it. What? So when we had the bans are restricted announcement, everybody sort of cheered and went, whoa, because the announcement was the background was the Erupting Rhapsody art.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone, almost ubiquitously across the board, was convinced that you guys were going to move Erupting Rhapsody to Category 3.
Yeah. Erupting Rhapsody stays 2 for now.
Sure. Magi will be very happy.
Outlook goes up to 2.
Sure.
Creative Shock moves out of Cat 1.
Interesting. And those are the changes for tomorrow.
Let me
check real
quick.
I can vamp a bit, and of course the stone scale band change as well.
Yeah. Oh, and Stone Skill Band is Cat 1.
Oh, interesting. The new errata version as well.
Yeah.
Still think that might be a problem in the future.
Yeah.
It does still have that very powerful effect to sort of cycle cards out of your memory.
So those are the 4 changes.
Okay. I mean, I think that...
Oh, it's a 3. Sorry.
4, I think. Yeah. That makes a little bit more sense. The reaction that I've seen to the erupting ban that is now not real have been mostly full of confusion. Of course, Matt did very well on erupting this weekend, but it was a fairly underrepresented strategy and shown to not be bulletproof. Right, he did lose in the finals, and the other players that were playing that erupting deck at the weekend did not perform nearly as well as Matt did, and I think that's largely due to Matt's experience with the deck. So you think it's okay for now? We're not gonna.
It's okay for now. It's not really. It's only there because the future game is in. It's not really there because it's too good or now or too bad. It's
And is that the case for most of the cards on the ban list? I know obviously the ones that are Category 3 are a reaction to them being too good in the now, but there are a lot of the cards on the category list.
It's fine for cards to be good.
Yeah.
As long as they're not causing a negative play experience.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a bigger reason to ban a card than cards being powerful. Because we design cards with math in mind, and it's
of course.
There's no way. Well, it's usually there's not it's a really rare for a card to be absurdly strong. It's not we accidentally made Creative Shock say draw 3 instead of draw 2. It's
right.
Who would do that, right? So
sure.
if something would be strong, it would probably be up to a +1 overvalue at most, right? Not +2, and stuff like Reckless Conversion. Is it strong? You could have just said win the game.
Right.
And we probably had if you have 10 cards in your memory, you win the game type of thing. But if it said that, I wouldn't have banned that card.
Sure.
But because
for the negative play experience, that extra long second ride turn.
Yeah.
And so I have to assume that's also why you're moving Korhazi Outlook up. That sort of removal of interaction from your opponent is a negative play experience.
Yeah.
Even though Tristan has, she did win the event, but had seen a little bit less representation. It's not so much about Tristan, it's about the play experience that exactly that card represents.
Yeah.
And so is that true of most of the other ones? I guess, Creative Shock is now leaving the list.
Yeah, Creative Shock, basically we planned this for a while, is we just give other elements Creative Shock.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's
their own way. Yeah.
As the game gets bigger and the pool gets wider, we see almost every set, the power level is increasing, not because you're power creeping things per se, right? But as the game gets wider and there's more options, that's where that additional power comes in. Like we saw Creative Shock's near ubiquity in DOA just because there wasn't a lot of options, right?
Yeah.
So that's exciting to know. I'm sure Matt will be very excited at home to know that he still gets to play his deck. And I'm personally very excited to see that Korhazi Outlook is maybe a little bit closer to being removed as a water player. I'm not much of a Korhazi Outlook enjoyer, I have to say that.
I mean, them playing it, it's like the argument for Outlook is that they're pre-interacting with your interaction.
Right.
So it's it's just that it's the end all be all of if it basically stops the third layer of prevention, which is already okay. When at a certain point, it's fair for there to be an end to it. Okay, this is the 10th counter spell. What if a card said, if this is a 10th counter spell in the stack, it can't be countered.
Right.
Sure. That doesn't sound too unreasonable, right? So Outlook basically just says, okay, you're pre-interacting with your interaction, so the issue is that it's a bit too efficient.
Sure. Yeah. Do you think that's sort of a iterative process? If we eventually see Korhazi Outlook move away, but could be replaced by something that's a little bit more similar, but more fair.
Yeah. It's Baruch, it's also technically pre-interaction.
Right.
So it just depends. It's probably one of the harder things to balance because it's more meta dependent too.
Right.
So who knows? It was a 2-cost 1/3 was the right time thing at the time that had pre-interaction, because basically no one was playing pre-interaction much in FTC. So
right, it was just racing. I'm playing my linear game plan, and if I get there before you do, great, awesome. Speaking on interaction, I would love to get your thoughts just a little bit about that sort of holistically in a game design sense. Obviously Grand Archive being the template, but something that I find really interesting about the way that you guys have designed interaction is that with the exclusion of Incapacitate, which I'm a little bit curious about, which even then does have its restrictions, but almost all of the other pieces of interaction, especially negates, but even as far as removal goes, are usually somewhat interactable by the opponent, right? We see a lot of these negate unless you pay 2 effects. A lot of the removal spells are damage based, so you can theoretically get up range with stuff like prevention effects and additional health. Is that something that you're trying to keep sort of under wraps, those end all be all interaction spells like Incapacitate or something, like Doomblade?
Well, we have a tier of strategies or a list of tiers of strategies that we want to be more interactable and less interactable.
Mm-hmm.
So it's by design that some things are less interactable than other things.
Gotcha.
Combat is super interactable. There's taunt, intercept, combat damage prevention is more accessible than spell damage prevention.
Mm-hmm.
That's all intentional, right?
Right.
But attack damage is also a lot bigger numbers.
Sure.
Right? So we basically plan around that. There's action cards don't have just got their first form of negate, hard negate, but it's it needs to be specifically an action card.
Right.
So
and it's a little bit cost restrictive as well.
Too.
Right?
So
I'm glad to see. I'm an interactive guy myself. I like playing some interaction, but it's nice to always have that ability to.
It's more interesting when you build an interaction deck. You have to plan to interact. Not like, well, you have to know what you're gonna interact with. Not like, okay, I'm just gonna put the most generic interaction, like 60 frostbinds, and expect to win, right? Because that's not fun.
Sure.
Like, but like if you know, okay, there's a lot of ally decks.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's a lot of champions that attack. Maybe Strong of Frost. Put 8 of those because multiple effects multiple cards might have similar effects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't want your deck filled with Path Exiles and counter spells.
Yeah.
Seems like something I think you said a while ago, and I wonder if we've gotten there, is regarding more controlling, more interactive strategies that you purposely made them a little bit weaker at the start of the game, so that I think your words were somewhere along the lines of so that people can appreciate the control strategies. Have we gotten to that point? Are we starting to see those slower decks and stuff like Tristan? Is that the intended control playstyle for Grand Archive?
Some people could call Tristan control. It's more of like a. I think like internally and externally, the community calls decks differently than what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Like people call ally decks aggro, but we don't call them aggro.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is that too much on the inside to know how
No, not really.
Quantify decks?
No, because aggro decks are the decks we call aggro decks are definitively like 1 or 2 turns faster than ally decks, which is like Fire Xander.
Sure.
Right. So like that's aggro.
Right.
Like, I mean, like aggro is basically the term you give the decks basically the fastest decks in the format.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then what's allies? Then allies, well, they interact. They use combat tricks to keep their allies alive, right? So, well, that's what mid-range does.
Sure.
Tempo mid-range.
Do you think that we have a control deck in the format right now that you guys would quantify as a control deck? Not one, obviously one that the community has discovered, not some secret testing control deck. Something like Arisana, not that she's competitively great. But
I don't think there is a prominent control deck of the meta. I think that the Tristan deck, it's like a mid-range combo deck more. It's like on the slower end of mid-range. But
yeah,
like it's,
and they have that
I don't
combo
think-
finish.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Like a control deck, I would think is like built in a way where like they will win the end game no matter what. Like it's like, I mean, eventually if technically Rye is like probably the most
like
control deck.
control deck.
Yeah.
I think actually, if I remember correctly, on the print and play decks for Dawn of Ashes Feast, I remember very specifically being very excited. Rye was described as a combo control deck in his like little description.
Yeah, I mean, control is basically, all right, if you get to the end, you should win.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like they have the best end game.
Mm-hmm.
And Tristan that's playing, their end game is just 1 card. I mean, that's fine.
Sure.
You could win, but like if it gets interacted, then
Right. Maybe something like we've seen Poro, who's on the playtest team, playing a lot of that water Tenora stuff.
yeah, that's like that could be a control deck with more Neos,
Right.
Yeah. But I don't think people are really playing that.
No, not prominent in the meta, but just sort of trying to get that barometer. It's super interesting.
Yeah, it's probably like most control decks would have at least like 10, 15 plus advanced numbers.
Sure. Yeah, so we sort of, I guess that makes sense. It's a natural evolution that the advanced element decks are the ones that want to take the game later, and so they'll sort of fit that niche. Even something like Merlin finishes the game a little bit too fast, I think, to be a control deck with cards like Fireball or whatever. But she is trying to take that game late for that inevitability.
Well, I think Merlin is, you could say, a good control deck because
she has that inevitability from her hero ability.
Yeah, and she runs a lot of advanced element cards, and they're pretty potent.
They're pretty good. They're fun.
Yeah. I mean, Crux is like the most 50-50 in like everything.
I've come all the way around. I have no problems with Crux. I say the Crux is fun.
I mean, did you see that chart that someone made with Ascent Taipei?
No.
Like someone made, like they went through every single matchup because all the deck lists were up, and they basically recorded, okay, like if Crux won against allies, like it's like 100 to 0. And they add it all up, and if you took a look at that chart, it's like Crux is the most 50-50 out of all the decks.
Data says that Crux is fun.
Yeah. Literally, Crux is fun.
Heard it here first. Well, second or third. Well, I think that's all I had. Is there anything else that you want to talk about with the people? Any notes you want to hit on?
No. I mean, that's all you have. That's all you have.
That's all I have. So my brain is empty. You guys can, of course, look forward to the developer stream that's coming out September 14th, right? You guys are going to be going over the design notes for AMB.
Yeah.
We're finally going to see what Conway does. I'm very excited.
Probably.
Probably.
Yeah.
Don't do that to me. Come on. I need something. I'm waiting so long. Yeah. She spins with purpose. That's what I
She
heard.
spins with purpose.
This
is correct.
I'm a very big fan. I don't know if you watched the show when we did it, but when you did the MRC tidbits, we did a whole episode where we talked about your MRC tidbits. And I think the ones that you've been tweeting for AMB so far are just like way more deranged. Like they just don't mean anything.
You understand the first one, though.
I do.
You should.
I should understand the first one
What's
about the
hay?
bales and hay.
Yeah, what?
Oh, the horses. Oh, that's fair. Oh,
Yeah.
true. The trusty Steve buff is true. I guess that's fair. Yeah. Okay. All right. Starting to see it. And soon we'll learn why Kongming spins with purpose. Whatever. I won't pressure you for that. We'll see that on September 14th. You guys can tune in for that developer live stream. And then we, of course, have Ascent Singapore coming up as well. Are you guys going to be going to that? Are you going to take the trip out to Singapore?
I think most of us will be.
Nice. Glad to see it. Well, hey, thanks, man. I appreciate you being on the show,
Yeah, no problem.
talking a bit about Grand Archive. Yeah, you guys should go check out that live stream on the 14th. Go to Ascent Singapore if you're in that SCA area, and we will see you soon.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.